I didn't want to be spherical. I wanted to.
Okay. Hello, 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 and welcome to Well Shit. It really is that simple. I'm Claire.
And I'm Serena. On this podcast, we help you to understand about your 12 universal needs, why they are currently not being well met,
How to meet them in ways that work for you, and how to consistently do so in quick, easy, and simple ways that fit seamlessly into your life.
We'll also help you to understand how doing so will have a positive ripple effect in literally every area of your life.
If you like what you hear, sign up for more support with meeting your needs with your weekly Universal Needs Notes at theuniversalneeds.com.
And enjoy the show.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, everyone.
Okay, I'm just going to own it. I'm a little stressed right now. It's been a little chaotic here right now. We've got people staying and there's been like people here and everything. And we've got a little recording window before an appointment. So I'm just going to take a deep breath.
Deep breaths. Shake it out.
Shake it out. And I'm in the room. It reminds me of that. Do you know who Paul McKenna is?
Mm-mm.
Like he was a hypnosis guy in the in the 90s in the UK. And like when he would bring somebody out of a hypnotic trance, he'd be like, I'm back in the room. Like I'm like, okay, I'm back in the room now. Like I'm here. We're present. And we're talking about something really, really important today.
Mm-hmm.
Like really important. And it's something that I think that a lot of people experience, but I think a lot of people experience it kind of silently. Like it's not something that it gets talked about a little bit more these days, but I know that there have been times in my life where I've maybe felt, well, there's a very big time in my life where I absolutely felt this. And I don't think I really shared it with many people at the time, if anyone. Like going back, I shared it sort of retrospectively, but it's kind of a little sort of silent issue for a lot of people. But that actually a lot of the time adds to its power. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about Imposter Syndrome. And this was prompted by a post that you saw online.
No, actually it was a community request.
And yes, it was. You're absolutely right.
Then
yes.
After the community request came through, there was a post online that one of my friends was struggling with imposter syndrome. And it was, I think it's a little bit backlogged. So it was a while ago, but it's kind of when I started to first really hear imposter syndrome come up amongst my friend group, which is interesting because like, we were just kind of refreshing on a situation that happened. And it's like, this seems to happen more with women who like will outwardly say it. It happens with men all the time.
I'm going to say it does. I'm going to make one of these kind of sweeping statements. I don't normally make these. I'm going to say it does happen with women more than it happens with men. And there's a needs-based reason why that's true. And it's not to say it doesn't happen with men, but I do think it is disproportionately an experience that women have in the working world.
Well, just from the systemic standpoint of
yes, exactly. So yeah, you're right. I've totally forgotten it came in as a community request. Do you want to kind of just sort of summarize the post that you saw that really I don't know what the word is. Like it kind of amplified the energy and the emotions around it for us. Like when we saw it, we're like, oh, we really need to do something about this.
So I have a friend acquaintance, like we're not close friends or anything, but back home or back where I grew up. Oh, that's weird. It was always a home base for a while, and now there's no home base there. So where I grew up, a woman that married somebody I went to high school with, she worked her ass off and started this little boutique business. I remember when it was like just friends like sending like, hey, look at this cute scarf. And then all of a sudden there's a huge online business. Well, like it's a small business, but like a very well done online business. And then there's a storefront. And I mean, this girl was always like, she put herself into her work. Kind of I think why it resonated, it reminded me a lot of us because she's somebody that has done the work she's the one that forwarded her brand, her business. She's the one.
She built it all herself.
She built it all herself, and
yeah.
she had amazing support around her as well. But this was her baby that she cultivated into this beautiful adult. And somebody sent her the nastiest letter. And she had fought back and forth whether or not she was going to post the letter. And she posted it to her friends. Like, she didn't put it in her business page. And they ripped apart every aspect of what.
Like, it was personal. It wasn't just, this was a bad customer experience.
No.
And his
this was another business owner in town just being nasty. Like, and to find the post, I'm like, oh, I want to find the post and just refresh myself. I typed in the word nasty because I remember that was one of the words that, like,
it just really resonated.
It resonated because that's what it was. It was
the
like
energy behind it.
Body shaming, business shaming, like, this is all luck. You don't deserve this. Like, it's a fluke how you got here. Like, all of this stuff. Like, this woman didn't pay herself for 6 years. She treats her employees like family. Like, she's always making sure she's paying them enough. And that means, like, sometimes she's, she'll take the hit on herself before she allows her people to do that.
I mean, that's entrepreneurship a lot of the time. Like, that's owning a small business. Like, that's like, like you're saying this. I'm like, yeah. Like, well, if you've built a small business, you know how this stuff works.
And there's a lot behind the scenes that nobody could even imagine when you're doing your own, like, when you're an entrepreneur and trying to.
And a lot of people think that it's like an overnight thing where it's like, oh, you just like created, like, overnight it became this success. No,
that's when you noticed me.
It's the visibility. The visibility shifted overnight, but there's like years of work behind the scenes that get you to that point.
And that was kind of part of it too. They were ripping on how she was promoting her business on social media and stuff. Like, as somebody who hates social media, like, and I feel like I'm on the cusp of the generation that was like, you can kind of take it or leave it. Like, I feel like there's a generation that is so ingrained, like, social media is so like this is life, this is part of life. I remember life without social media, and I remember it being pretty peaceful. Right. So, like,
I'm going to say, I think that's more of a you thing than an our generation thing, the whole take it or leave it. I think the generation before us is much more take it or leave it. I think most of our generation are squarely in the social media as a part of life. They maybe are not connected to it in quite the same way the next generation is, but I think that's definitely more.
Some of my friends are more that generation, so it seems a little more I'm like, oh, we're all 25. No, none of us are 25. So
no, we're not. Nor would we want to be. Oh my god, I wouldn't want to be 25 again. No.
No, not even with what I like. No.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. So she was just trying to grow her business, and she got this nasty fucking letter. I mean, and it was just like, you read it and you're like, oh, like, you can see that the person on the other end has some serious things they need to deal with in their own world.
Right.
And there was a lot of projection, and some of it was very obvious. And she even named it. She's like, I know this isn't true. And she kind of, she was torn as to whether to respond to this letter or not. And she's like, actually, no, like, I know how I'm operating, and I want to clear up these points. And she went through and she broke it down, and it was beautifully done, where she took the emotion out of it, which is not easy. And especially, like, I would have had trouble taking the emotion out of it. And we do this, like,
and a lot of time the whole taking the emotion out of it normally is repressing the emotion. Whereas what we would do is we would feel the emotion, release it so that it's not part of the equation. Like, and normally there would be several iterations of said letter. The first one would be like, you fucking what? Like, like, it would be like all the emotion would be there. And then you keep writing the letter until it becomes the point where it's like the emotion's been processed. So it's not a necessary part of that. The writing of the letter actually is a lot of our processing. Like, I mean, I can't tell you the number of letters that Serena and I have sent where there's like version 13, version 12. Like, it's like, because we take that's part of our process. It allows us to do our emotional process.
And I'm sure she had to have done that in some way.
Yes.
But I read it. I was like, okay. And then a couple of weeks later, she posted about imposter syndrome, and she's like, you know what? I know who I am. I know what I've created. I know I worked hard for this, and yet I'm questioning it. I've stopped doing TikToks. I've stopped going running because apparently it doesn't matter that I'm, trying to do the best for my health. You're saying that I'm XYZ in the negative. And it was so heartbreaking to see this woman who had built such a great small business and is continuing to build and has not gotten to a level of success and has been like, look at me, here I am. It's, what can I do next? How can I get into the community now? How can I
how can I help support more? Yeah.
How can I support in totality? So to hear that she was dealing with, I'm like, how can you look at what you've done and think it was a fluke? Like, that's not the situation. And she did know that.
Right.
But she could not get her brain out of thinking of the imposter syndrome mentality, which is, I didn't earn this. I didn't, this is luck, or I don't deserve to be here. I didn't
Well, and let's break down. If you don't know what imposter syndrome is, some people may not have heard the term. Basically, imposter syndrome is where you feel like an imposter and you're afraid at some point somebody is going to find you out. So it's you believe that you haven't earned the job that you've got, or that you don't have the right skills or credentials or experience to do the job that you've done. And you're worried, there's this constant fear that somebody's going to call you out at some point and be like, oh, what the hell are you doing there? No. We need to get somebody qualified for this. And so that's what that imposter syndrome, and it takes many different forms, but that's the most common one. And it happens a lot in corporate life, where especially when we're in this kind of age where we're trying to start to rectify some of the imbalances in some companies are starting to rectify some of the imbalances in their teams, especially higher up. And they are wanting to promote more people who are from marginalized groups, including women, including BBIMP people. So that's Black, Brown, Indigenous, and Melanated people. That term was created by According to Weeze. Whether it's people from different any kind of intersections of those of different kind of marginalized groups, there's this kind of trying to get more of that visibility and that representation and that leadership, because the business science proves that the more diverse your teams, the better they perform, and that's both in terms of gender. And I'm not going to get into all of that. But there is certainly in some cases, there are companies that are trying to rectify this imbalance. And then what ends up happening is that somebody who has been systemically devalued by society, and a lot of the time from a business context has been devalued in terms of they haven't been recognized, they haven't been promoted, they haven't been compensated appropriately for what they've done, and now we're in these higher levels. And the reason that imposter syndrome, from a needs point of view, let's put a needs lens on this, the reason that the basic root of imposter syndrome is where your internal sense of value is not matching with the external perception of the value that is being placed on you by being in this position. So what's happening is that how you feel in terms of your value and the value that is put onto that role, you're seeing a mismatch. You're seeing that the value, your internal value, is lower than this role is. And that's the thing, is that where you have people who've been systemically devalued, and that's the reason I said it happens more to women than it does to men, because we are systemically devalued comparatively within our society. But then when you then take those intersections even further, the more marginalized you get and the more intersections of marginalization you sit at, the more amplified that is likely to get, because of the systemic devaluing in our culture of those people. So a white woman is going to experience it to some extent. A Black woman is probably going to experience it even more. A Black trans woman would probably experience it even more. So it's that's where this the core of it from a needs point of view is that how I feel and how I value myself is not congruent with what this value is. And that this friend that Serena's talking about is that and this is one of the reasons that this is such a tough thing to address, because the challenge we have is that we can cognitively know that this is true. We can cognitively know all of the time and effort we've put in and all of the skills that we've got. But there's a difference between knowing it and knowing it. And if you're not watching on the video, I'm pointing to my brain and I'm pointing to kind of my body and my heart. So there's knowing it at your brain level is one thing, but we need to feel it. We need to believe it. And the challenge that we have is because of how we are relating to, the value need sits at the in the trunk of the universal needs tree. The value need is one of the most chronically unmet needs in our culture, period. Like when I work with clients, the different extent to which that value need is compromised varies depending on the individual. But I have not yet had a client who has had a well-met value need. And I'm going to go a little further than that. I don't think I have met many humans on the planet who have a well-met, and I don't mean arrogance, I don't mean self-importance, I don't mean trying to prove how good I am. I mean congruent internal, I have this value and I know I have this value and I live and interact and move through the world as if I have this value. I'm seeing lots of nods from that side of the recording booth.
Again, in my head, I was just about to say that. Like, I don't know many people. And so, human ourselves, sometimes we're,
we have moments.
Flippy floppy on it. And it's like, no.
and it's not surprising because we've talked about this before, we live in a society that systemically devalues us, all of us. And then that compromise and that devaluing is exponential once you start to look into the different levels of marginalization as well. And so, of course, where we have this chronically unmet value need, and that chronically unmet value need manifests differently with different people, because it's like, for some people, it will look like imposter syndrome. For some people, it will look like big ego because that's their insecurity. They're trying to make up for their insecurity, or arrogance, or self-importance. So those two things often are two sides of the same coin, like that not feeling good enough and that giving the impression of better than everybody else or better than others is a lot of the time both rooted in an unmet value need because it's the insecurity that's manifesting in that way. The interesting thing is that there was something that you said in this, which is that, interestingly enough, I've had an experience that recently where somebody was saying things about me that were categorically untrue and was very, very hurtful. And the interesting thing about it is that there is a part of you that like, I'm like, I know this isn't true. And yet, because we have had a lifetime of conditioning of you are not valued, you are not valuable, you are not good enough, you are not worthy, which means that even when you have done a lot of work to build your value need, and this is the antidote to imposter syndrome and the antidote to all of these things that are rooted in the I'm not good enough, and that kind of core belief that sort of sits inside us rather than in our brains, the one that sits inside us going, I don't feel good enough still. How you rectify that is to actually take time and cultivate your value needs specifically. Do things that will start to create this, start to move the recognition of your value from a mental thing into an emotional thing and into something that's embodied. And that will come into some tips on how to boost your value need a little bit later. But the interesting thing is that because we've had this lifelong conditioning of you're not good enough, even when you have a pretty well met value need, sometimes something will hit you sideways and it'll be like, whoa. And that old stuff will be like, hold on a second. It's so ingrained in us and it can still get triggered, even when we know it's not true. And so this is why it's, like, I noticed that one of the things that was interesting about the post that Serena's talking to, there was one thing that really stood out to me in it. I didn't even mention it to you at the time, but I was like, ding, ding, ding. Was like, she said something along the lines of, if you're experiencing imposter syndrome, just let it go. And it's like, there's a kind of that a lot of the time looks like repression, like it or looks like repression. That's what you're doing, is you're just like, I'm trying to not feel it anymore. I'm trying to, or I'll try to distract myself from it. This is what happens when we have these unmet needs, where it's like that we're like, I'm going to do something to distract myself from feeling this, or I'm going to do something to try to convince the rest of the world, and sometimes try to convince myself that I'm feeling good about this and I've let it go and it's all fine. And the truth of the matter is, the only way that you can actually quote unquote let it go, one, is to process it. Like, and I feel how you feel about this. It's okay to acknowledge that I feel this way. And whether that's because you've had some nasty person send you a letter that's completely untrue, or whether that's because you're sitting, you've like name the fact that you've spent your entire life being told you're not good enough. And now you're being told to confer this value on yourself. Those two things, like, it's okay to feel the way that you feel about that. Like, that's human. To if you've been told that you're not good enough, and now all of a sudden you're being told that you've got to value yourself at this level. There's a gap there. We've got to try and bridge that gap. It's okay to feel that way. It's okay to feel angry about the fact that you have been conditioned this way. It's okay to be upset and sad and to grieve for what could have happened if I hadn't been conditioned this way. Like, when you think about like where we would all be if we hadn't had that conditioning of like not being good enough. Wild.
Well, I am shocking information about to come your way. We're all just trying to figure it out. Like,
news to me.
Shocker. And I have a lot of friends that have been dealing with this lately, and it's like, oh, well, this person came in, and you know, I'm in this job right now, and this person came in spouting off all this lingo, and I don't know what they're talking about, and it's like, let's retail. There's so much lingo. There's merchandising, and you know, there's other lingo
like POS, like point of sale, and those sorts of
and
things.
Like different things. And to somebody else, it might be a cash register and window decorations, or to somebody else, it's this and that and the other thing. And it just happens to be that one person uses this, one person uses this. You're talking about the same thing.
Right.
However, the person using something that's more of a professional or industry term sounds like they know more. And maybe they do. And maybe they're just figuring it out like you are.
And maybe they're using the lingo to try to give the illusion of value so that they can feel better about themselves. I have an actual real life experience of this. So I worked for a company many years ago. It was my first kind of real job, like office job, as opposed to, not to say that other jobs weren't real jobs, but it was like the first step in terms of my career, I suppose, as opposed to just jobs that were before that. And I was in charge of special projects. I worked in IT. I've shared this with you, with people on the podcast before. And I remember I was responsible for I worked for a company that made DVDs and CDs when those were things that people actually used. And we had a warehouse where we would store them all. And then we had a sales department, a marketing department, accounts, all that sort of stuff. And they were wanting to update the server, the database system that basically everything was using. So, we had a team come in to help figure out what it, like, design the new system. But obviously they had to make sure that the system was going to work for the people who were going to be using it. And I remember the guy that, I never enjoyed the guy that worked for the company who was like heading up this thing, because he would talk in jargon to make himself look better than everybody else. And so that everybody else is going, what the fuck's he talking about? Oh, God.
I know people that, to purposely confuse other people.
Yes. Or to make other people feel like they're less than, or they're not good enough. And I remember, it was quite funny actually, because now bear in mind, this was my first like career job. So this was in probably the year 2000, 2001. So I was like 20 years old, basically. And maybe 21. And I remember sat in the boardroom, and at one end I had all of the tech people who were building the system. At the other end, I had all the warehouse staff who were actually going to be using it. And I was sat in the middle. And this guy would go, well, basically, blah, 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 blah. And he'd jargon. And I think he hated the fact that there was a young girl who understood the jargon that he was saying, which meant that he couldn't make everybody else feel like crap, because I'd be like, what he's saying is this, and this. And then the warehouse people would go, well, what we need is blah, 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 blah. And then I would be able to translate that into text speak for the people. I mean, I literally translated the entire meeting between the two things. But the key thing was why? Like, why are you using jargon? Mm-hmm. That person was using jargon to make himself look like he was superior in some way, and to make himself feel better about himself, and to make himself feel more valuable. Mm-hmm. And I believe there was a conscious part of it that was to make people feel less valuable, because that's what he needed. He didn't actually need it, but that's his strategy for feeling more valuable about himself, was for other people to feel less valuable.
I mean, just listening, that's a shitty way to run a business.
It's a shitty way to run your life. I mean, like, people sometimes. I mean, like, I think that's part of the reason. Like, he did it so that he could charge more money.
Yeah.
Because look at all the things I know, and it's like, and as someone who worked in technology, the most valuable technology person is the person who can communicate with everybody, no matter what their level, in a way that they can understand. That's valuable.
That's having been in HR, and that's an area I felt imposter syndrome with when I first started, because that's before Claire and I started even working together. I was in the needs sphere, but I hadn't,
because I talked about it all the freaking time.
Yeah, and if you remember, I understood it at that point, which
she could have taught it at that point. I mean, remember that?
I don't want to talk about that, but yes, I do. But I had never done HR. Like, you go to school to do HR, like, as a director, and down here a lot of people kind of have to figure out different roles that they may not have thought they were ever going to go into, but there's a need, there's an alignment, and it just happens to work out.
And they're the best person given the circumstances.
And that kind of happened with me. I started out as an assistant, and then it was like, okay, do you think you have this? And it's like, actually, I do. Now, from HR, there's a corporate part of it, and then there's a human part of it, human resources. I leaned one way more than the other, and I'm sure it's not hard to guess which way I leaned. It was not corporate. And to the corporate people, I didn't know what I was doing. And there was a little part of me that was like, oh no, I don't know what I'm doing, because I didn't go to school for this, and I just did blah, 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 blah. I've been a manager. I have worked with some of the most challenging people from a customer standpoint, from a management standpoint. I used to work for VPs directly, like, in multiple of them at the same time. Like, intense situations are my thing. Like, problem solving, troubleshooting, those are things that I'm just good at. But these higher ups would have me questioning. And then especially when our values didn't quite align, it was like, oh, what do you know? And I'm like, but this is humanity.
Actually,
and this
more
is
than you do.
Yeah. And then once
because you didn't learn this shit, I know about the need stuff.
Right. And then once I learned the need stuff, and especially with the value need, I'm like, I'm coming in, I'm getting the job done, I'm doing a damn good job. Yes, it's different than what XYZ may have done. If you don't like it, let me know, and we'll figure out a way that works for all of us. But like, I was questioning myself almost daily.
I'm gonna say but here. But like all of what you've just said, yeah. But the thing was that you were actually doing a better job, because you were bringing in the human element, and so much of the corporate stuff, it removes that.
And it's ingrained learning that a lot of people who have had this training, and not saying like, I am not discounting training and education or anything like that, but you learn on the job, and it's like, okay, I see this works, I see this doesn't work. Like, what if we do like tweak this and make it just slightly more human?
Right. Well, and it's funny, like, so like my big imposter syndrome moment was when I began coaching. I'd done all my stuff. And the thing is that when I began professionally coaching, shall we say, I had been coaching my entire life. In lots of different ways. I was always the go-to, the people who would come to for help and support and advice. And I'd done my trainings. I knew what I was doing. And I remember being like, I felt like I had to have all the answers to all the questions that anyone might ask. And what happens if someone asks a question and I don't know the answer? And that's the thing, is that when you don't value yourself, that's what you think is like, well, if I don't know the answer, it's the end of the world, because maybe at that point they'll figure it out that they don't know what the answer is. Now, if I don't know what the answer is, funny, like Serena actually asked me a question the other day about something, and I was like, I'm going to have to think about that. Like, there's a lot of nuance in here, and it's going to take me some time to kind of unravel this and figure out from a need standpoint. And obviously, I am one of the world experts on needs. Like, the US government just basically declared that by giving me my visa. Like, I am an expert in this, and even I'm like, I'm not going to give you an answer just so that it looks like I know what I'm talking about. I want to make sure that I'm representing what I believe to be true, and I'm doing it in a way that is in alignment, and that I'm not missing anything in doing that. I would have done that when I first started, because I was so terrified of being caught out as the person who didn't know what they were doing.
It was almost like you had to put something in that.
You had to have an answer.
I find that a lot with this business too, because obviously Claire created what we're teaching. So I came into it, and yes, I live it, I breathe it. We like, this is our lives. Yet still, there are some times where it's like somebody will ask me something and I'm like, oh, that's beyond me. And now I say that, and it's like, let me check with Claire on this one. There was a time that I'd be like, no, I can't say that I'm going to Claire. I'm just going to, either make it up, vomit verbally all over you with some sort of, whatever my mind comes up with. But that was a value thing. It was like, I have to put something out there. And now I can be like, I'm going to go to the source on this one. And that doesn't make me any less knowledgeable about what we do or any less successful in what we do. And it's the same thing for a while. Anytime was like, oh, you have a podcast. That's cute. I was like, oh. Like, and for a while it was that like deflated of like, you think what I do is cute, not valuable, not game changing, not anything. It's just, oh, you're filling your time with a little hobby, aren't you? Because that's how they'd say it too. Like, it was never like, oh, there are sometimes, oh, that's awesome, you have a podcast. But there was a lot of times it was like, oh. I
think that was also because a lot, like during the beginning of the pandemic, everybody was starting a podcast, and it's like everyone's got a podcast. That too. Like we're 2 years into a weekly delivery podcast. Yeah. Like, this is not just, it's not something we did on the spur of the moment just to see if it would work.
Right.
There was some kind of thought behind this. The interesting thing is, actually, I think that when you first joined the Universal Needs, there was a lot of imposter syndrome I saw in you, like, where I valued Serena. I knew the value she was bringing.
She's like, what do you think? And I'm like, She's like, somebody would be like, oh, what do you guys do? And she'd be like, Serena. And I'm like, Claire. It would be just an introduction to an introduction, because I didn't value, like, and I was the one, like, when I pitch it, or not, that's the thing.
Yeah. There is no pitching.
There is no pitch. When I just talk about it, people are hearing my lived experience with it, which is from somebody who has learned from it. It's better than like, I created this. Yeah. And now
here's the thing I've done, and here's why it's great. No, that's never gonna go across as well to somebody. Then this is the thing that changed my life.
Right. And it doesn't have to, and that's the thing. It doesn't have to be a pitch. It doesn't have to be this corporate box thing. Like, we know my feelings on boxes. Get the fuck out of my space. But I was trying to do that because that's what professional looked like. That's what success looked like. That's what you had to do. And it's like, no, I'm a relaxed, chill type of person. Like,
and also, the thing I would say is that the interesting thing is that what was interesting in this particular situation, and actually the situation that Serena had with her HR situation, and I'm not sure I've ever articulated this to you in quite the way I'm about to.
I love when that happens on camera.
Is that Serena had brought more value to that role than somebody with experience and expertise would have done. If somebody, like, the fact that Serena didn't have the HR training meant that but she had the experience of being one of the people who was being supported, quote unquote, by HR, she knew how to communicate with them. She knew how to support them way better than the corporate drones did. And the same thing when it came to joining my business. And this is one of those where people are like, no, I don't understand that. You created it. You were the one who came up with this. Surely you're always going to be the person who's best at this. And I'm like, No, the thing is, I know it too well. Is that Serena knows how to speak to people who are just starting to come into this, sometimes in ways that are better than I do, because Serena's more recently at that point where she didn't know it, and it's a new thing. A great example is that, I mean, there was a point in time where I knew how to do images for our slides better than anybody else on the planet because I was doing it. Now I can't hold a torch to what Serena does, because if she can't find it, she creates it. And it's like some of the stuff she comes out with, I'm like, that's really fucking cool. Like, it really is.
And I have zero graphic design background. I just fucked around with copy paste, like simple editing things. And there was a while that I'm like, I don't know, but like you can see this. Like, it took a while of Claire being like, no, that's actually, like, I can't,
that's awesome.
Like, that's good. And I'm like, yeah, actually, I am pretty bad at this. Like,
so let's get into, so, I mean, we've all had experience with this to a greater or lesser extent.
I know, and I'm mindful of where you're at. One place that I want to mention this, and I don't think we're going to get into that. We're not going to dive deep into this, but I just want to know, and just off the top of my head, we know how this one goes. Parenting. Parents.
I was already in your head.
Yeah.
I knew where you were going with this.
So many parents, but especially moms.
Yeah.
Especially moms. It's like you're a child, like you have clothed and fed and
kept alive
this being, like,
and you know them better than anybody.
Yeah. And so many parents, I'm not good enough. I'm like, what I'm doing isn't enough. Like, this value's like, and
a lot of that.
When are they going to find out I'm not a Pinterest mom? I was like, you know what a Pinterest mom to me is? Somebody who has failed cupcakes and an art project that was supposed to be a giraffe, but somehow it turned into like a hippopotamus. Like that, like it's not perfection. It's not perfection ever.
Well, and that's the thing is, I would say a Pinterest mom is the illusion of perfection. And I think that what we're talking about is authentic parenting, which is being real. And the thing is that I think a lot of the thing that's contributed to this parental thing is that there are a lot of people who don't have kids who are the perfect parents. Like, it's funny how like everyone's a perfect parent until they have a child, and then all of a sudden they realize what the reality is. We've both done it in the past, and now we've got a very different perspective on it. And so I think that again, it's that conditioning thing where it's like we hear things so many times and we then start to believe it. And because that parenting vibe, where the hell did that come from? That parenting aspect is landing on the already just me as a human being is not enough. Oh, look, one neatly triggers the other and it gets amplified. So you're absolutely right. And this is something that shows up in so many areas of life. It happens in relationships. Yes, it does.
Definitely.
That's where I was going, but yes, it does.
I mean, people who are like, they're gonna find out I'm not a good wife, or I'm not a good, like, and I'm gonna stick with women because that's what I can speak to. But I'm not a good wife. I'm not doing enough. Oh, I've heard this before. Oh, I had to do a freezer meal. Like I'm.
My freezer's about to be full of meals. That's all I'm gonna eat, basically.
You're fed. Like, right. It's okay. And I think sometimes we forget to tell ourselves it's okay. It's okay that it's not exactly what we wanted it to be. Like, yes, I would like to cook a 6-course meal every night.
I wouldn't. Screw that.
I'd like to have the capacity,
nope, even with the capacity, that is not where I'm spending my time.
But still, like,
I want somebody else to make me a 6-course meal every night. Now that I could get on board with, but
fair enough.
I think that it shows up in a lot of different ways. Like, how many people don't dance because they're not good dancers? The point of dance is not to be a good dancer. It's to have freaking fun.
Joe used to say that, and he is the most amazing dancer to watch.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, and we're dancers, so
like trained dancers,
and it is amazing watching him just feel the music. And it's not bad. It's just different. And it's like, no, shake your little.
Take your
do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do it. And that's like
same thing with singing. Like we get like we frequent one of the best karaoke bars on the island, and the amount of people are like, oh, I don't want to sing, I'm not a good singer. I'm like, the thing I love, and I've said this to everybody, the thing I love about Bobby's Monkey Bar is it doesn't matter if you're great, it doesn't matter if you can't you don't hate one single note, the whole bar will be behind you. Be like, yes, you go do your thing, we're here supporting you. And so often it gets it gets in the way. It's like this idea of like, oh, there's a value conferred on being on stage in a karaoke bar, and I don't value my own voice that way, so I can't get on stage. It's the same. It's the same pattern. It just, we don't see it as imposter syndrome because it's there's a very definite situation in which we see those sorts of things, but it shows up in every area of life. And the basics are, we don't feel good enough, and we're afraid of doing something, and that's and at work we can not do it, but I mean, generally speaking, if we don't do it,
there's
we
a
get fired.
Yeah.
we figure I feel like we have to figure it out, because we have to, if we can figure it out, then we'll keep going, we'll keep getting a paycheck, and maybe nobody will find out. But in other areas of life, we just don't do those things, and it means that our needs get compromised, because dancing is not something you do because you're good at it. It's something you do to have fun. Singing is not something you do because you're good at it. It's an expression. Same thing with art. Like, oh, I'm not good at that. But it's like, who the fuck cares? Get out some crayons and doodle. Like it doesn't have to. And that's the thing, is that there's so many ways in which this showing up compromises our needs. I'm really curious as to what you're looking for.
I think I have it as a screenshot, and I'm trying to not drop down the rabbit hole of going to search for it. There was a post that spoke to this, and I think you got it. You talk and I'll.
Anyway, so what do we do about that? What do we do about this? The most important thing with this is to start to meet our value need. Now, the best way of meeting our value need is by meeting our needs, because what tends to happen is our needs aren't met, and that gets internalized as we're not worthy of having our needs met, which means our needs don't get met even further, which means that gets internalized as our needs are not worthy of being met, and that self-worth spiral goes down, 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 down. So, as we've said before, the spiral works in the other direction, which means that if you do something to meet your needs, even if you don't feel worthy of it, the fact that your needs are met will be internalized, maybe just in a teeny tiny way, but it will be internalized as, I'm a little bit worthy of having my needs met. And that will have you be more likely to do things to meet your needs, which means that you'll start to feel more worthy, which will have you meet your needs, which will start to feel worthy. And that spiral works in the other direction as well. So the first thing is, do things that are going to be meeting your needs, because by doing that, you are going to be saying, I am worthy of having my needs met. If I'm worthy of having my needs met, I have value. Like it's the equation. It's how it works. But there are specific things that you can do that really are, about supporting the value need. So there are things like, you can just take a moment to remind yourself of your value. And what I'm going to suggest is that when you do this, make sure it's not just a mental exercise. Make sure that you are actually taking the moment to feel it, because it's very easy to go, yep, I have value. There's a big difference to be like, really take a moment to feel that I have value, and breathe in that feeling of I have value. You want to, I felt like there was a jump in.
Oh no, I was pointing at the difference between your head and your heart again.
Yes.
I do have that thing that I was talking about, though.
You want to?
Yeah, I'm going to try and summarize it, just so, because I don't know who the person is who wrote it, and I don't want to, not knowing, I rather just kind of do the summary of it.
Yeah.
Basically, it was somebody who is an archaeologist, and they were on a dig, and somebody was asking them get to know questions, and like, do you play sports? What's your favorite subject, and blah, blah, blah. And so we went through all of these things, and he's like, I do this, I do this, I do this. And the person was like, wow, that's amazing. Like, you do so many things. And they were like, no, I'm not good at any of them. And the person that they were talking to said, I don't think that's the point of doing things. Like, it's not to be good at it. It's to gain all of these wonderful experiences and have all these things. So as Claire was saying, like, people who don't dance or don't craft or don't, like, I feel like in such a creative community, especially like that there's so many people that do things. And then there's that counterbalance of so many people, oh, I can't do that because it's not going to look like this, that, or the other thing. it's not supposed to. It's supposed to look like your thing.
Right.
And, you know, glitter for me was a shit show until all of a sudden it was like, oh, look I've figured this out. And then there are certain things that I've done and I'm like, well, that was fun to learn. And I'm done.
Well, and the thing is that like you're never going to be, well, that's not true. It's unlikely you're going to be good at something the first time you do it. But like it can be about the learning. Like learning is part of meeting our needs.
The self-expression of it.
Right. Well, that's different. Like the learning is one thing. That meets needs. Self-expression is another thing. And it's like, it doesn't have to look good to be expressing who you are or how you feel. Like, it's like, how do we do this thing that really honors what is present for us?
All I can think of is having like a lump of clay and being like, I'm supposed to make a mug, and then coming out with some sort of lumpy creation. And it's like, well, apparently I wasn't in a mug mood, but like, look at this.
So I made a thing. Here's the thing I made.
And it felt good to smush and to like, I didn't want to be spherical. I wanted to.
Okay. There have been times where I feel like, and that's the thing is that in order to, we think that in order for something to have value, there has to be a point to it. And a lot of the time in our society, the point is good or perfection. And the point can be experiencing the thing, whatever it is. The point can be, I mean, like, what's the point of what do you call them? The smash rooms, where you go and smash shit up.
Yeah, usually a smash room.
Rage room. That's what. And it's like, what's the point of that? Like, the point of that is to just feel how you feel and get it out. And so by honoring your needs, by honoring the things that you need, that you're going to actually support your value need more and more. The key thing is to it can be helpful to kind of do the mental exercise of like, as Serena's friend said, like, I know this is true. I know that's true. I know that's true. But the problem is when we make it, I know that's true, is that we assume that we're then going to feel that. And those two things are not necessarily the same thing. So yeah, you can go through and do an audit and go, well, this is true and this is true and this is true and this is true. But then with each of those things is to go, yes, I know it's true. How does it feel to know that it's true? How does it feel to know I've done this degree? How does it feel to know I've got this experience? How does it feel to know that the US government said I'm the only person in the world who can do what I do? Like, that's a big deal to me. But there's a difference between going, isn't it cool that happened, and how, like, taking a moment to feel it, and like I said, like, breathe it in, like, to every cell of your body, like this feeling of worthiness, this feeling of value, this feeling of this thing being true. And I think that so a lot of the time, we're caught up in this mental like prison where it's like we only exist from here up. What we want to do is start bringing that down and feeling that more within our bodies. And when we can do that, that's the point at which we're able to start to shift this belief. Because as I said, mentally we may know that, like, it might not make any sense. We're like, logically I know I'm worthy of this. Logically I know I can do this. And there's a difference between your logic and there's, as I said, knowing and knowing. And you want to get to the point where you know it. So if that is the bit that you need to do, that's the bridge you need to traverse. It's like, first bring it into the logic. Like, what is it that I believe? What is it that I know to be true? What are the things I've done? What are the reasons that I know I am worthy of this? And then take that, each one of them individually. Don't try and do it all at once, because sometimes you're going to miss some. Each of them, like, take that moment and, like, take it from your head and bring it into your body and be like, okay, breathe. How does it feel for that to be true about me? Because I know that's true about me. And the second you start to do that, it completely changes things.
Something that helped me to bridge that gap was the why, figuring out the why. Like, I know this is true. Why do I know this is true? Because you start that, it's like, I know this is true, walk away, do the next thing. Then it is. It's just sitting up here. But why do I know this is true? I know that I am good at my job because of X.
Because this person said something cool,
and then
I've had a good review.
Feel that one, just that one. Because like Claire said, you start lumping it in together and then all of a sudden it's just, it's a lot. But if you do it individually, it's like, oh, I do that. And I do that. And I do. Damn, they're lucky to have me.
Right.
Like, and that's where I got to. Like, they got to a point where I was just like, oh, fuck this shit. Like, and then like my entire being switched and I was like, no, not fuck this shit. Like, I'm going to choose to go to work, going back to our last episode. Like, I'm going to choose to go there and I'm going to do this because, like, because of this, this, and this.
Right.
And because of that, and that, I am doing my job. I am good at this.
Right. Absolutely. And I think just generally, like it's very what's the word I'm looking for? Common in this situation to look at it and only look at it in the context of the job, or only look at it in the context of the parenting, or only look at it in the context of the dancing, or whatever it is. And the thing about it is that what we want to do is we want to start taking care of our value need and meeting our value need at a general level. So yes, you can remind yourself that I am worthy of doing my job. So I've got a piece of hair right in front of my face and I'm trying to figure out how to get it out. Yes, like you can remind yourself that you are good enough to do this job. Yes, you can remind yourself you have the qualifications to do this job. But actually taking it a step deeper, you can go, yes, you can remind yourself you are worthy simply because you exist, period.
Yeah,
and take a moment to breathe that in, not just know it as a thing, but actually feel it.
Yeah, not reacting to the fact you're feeling the imposter syndrome at work in parenting, because then like you can get your value up in that area and then all of a sudden work is life. Or, like I feel like doing it as the daily kind of ingraining I am worthy simply because I exist makes it so it's not like I'm only worthy at work. Because I've been in that situation too, where I'm like, okay, I've got my work value, like my career, my value is really good. But then I go home and I'm like,
And I know people where it's like they know their value at work, but they don't know their value outside of the workplace, because they know in their body what their value is in the workplace, because they've proven it over and over and over again after years of working there. But then they step outside of that and they don't realize they've proven they're worthy of existing. They're worthy because they exist every single minute of every single second of every single day, because they haven't been taught to connect to that. So it's like really important to, yes, we want to do it in the context of which we're being triggered in that moment. And yes, that's important to do. And if we feel innately valuable outside of that context, it's going to be far harder for that to be triggered, because that's what happens, is that this lands on an already I don't feel good enough, which blows everything up, which makes it feel even bigger. If we feel like, if I know, okay, so for example, if I know I'm valuable and I know I'm worthy and I know I'm good enough and I'm feeling a little out of kilter in terms of this work thing, is there a training course I could do? Is there something I could do to feel like I'm able to do better at this job? So that's when you start to, like, it starts to flip around, where it's like, I'm not good enough, someone's going to find out, and then it's like, well, actually no, I am good enough. But if I'm feeling like I don't really know about, I'm going to use my old favorite, accounts, like, is there a training course I can do to go and learn the basics of accounts so I can feel more confident in that? And that then becomes something constructive you're doing to create more of this. Now, it's really important that you don't do what a lot of people do, which is like what I first started doing in the personal development and spirituality thing, which is like, I don't feel good enough. I'm going to try and do as many courses as I can to finally feel good enough, because the courses are not going to make you feel good enough. You have to start with that feeling of like really connecting to that feeling of your innate value first. Then from that place, it'll be, okay, what do I want to do from the place of knowing I already have value? And that becomes an entirely different thing. Anything else you want to add?
I'm good.
Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We hope that this has been helpful. And if there's anything on this topic where you're like, oh, they said this, can you go into that a little bit further? Let us know. We'd love to add it to our record list. But between now and next time, we will be back very soon. Thank you for being here. And remember to stay safe, to take care of yourself, and to continue to meet your own needs. Lots of love. Bye.
Bye, friends.
That's it for today.
If you like what you heard
and would like to see some of Serena's awesome facial expressions,
check out the video podcast on YouTube.
And remember, imposter syndrome shows up when how we feel about our value internally doesn't match up with the value we see being placed on us externally. So in order to rectify this, take care of your value need. The first step, remembering that you are valuable and you are worthy simply because you exist.
Well, shit. It really is that simple.